What's good, y'all? This is a make or break season for the Toronto Raptors. I think we can all see that there has been an organizational shift. Alarms are up. Masai is gone. Larry is gone. The pressure is on. That's where we're at right now. The pressure is on. And that pressure is on Bobby Webster. That pressure is on Darko Rajakovic. That pressure is on Scottie Barnes. We haven't talked a lot on this channel about what would happen if this all doesn't go well. But in today's live, I want to talk about what that pressure is going to look like, what the timeline is, what the expectations are, what is the rubric of success? What would success even look like for the Toronto Raptors this year? And what happens if they don't meet that mark? Then I want to go into a little bit of a deep dive into what I think Scottie Barnes needs to do to actually take that next step so that Darko Rajakovic and Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster's faith is frankly rewarded. That's Tariq saying Darko looks evil as hell in that thumbnail. Well, he might need to be an evil genius to convert Scottie Barnes into the type of franchise engine that can make this whole thing go. But all of this really does come down to one player. And I understand that there's a lot of players on this team, and I don't want to make it hyper individualistic. Obviously, you need everything to go. If Emmanuel quickly misses the season, you're going to be in trouble. If your bench doesn't perform, you're going to be in trouble. If Grady Dick or Ochai Abaji don't take a next step, if guys don't hit their shots, if Brandon Ingram is hurt, if Jakob Pertl regresses off a cliff and cannot protect the rim, a lot of these things are going to come into it, obviously. But these are moving parts. These are ancillary pieces. Obviously, Darko's got to coach. Bobby Webster's got to be opportunistic and manage the team properly. Trainers got to train. Assistant coaches got to, diagram good plays and, figure out the margins. But none of this really works without Scottie Barnes taking that next step this year. And I hope he's aware of it. But is Darko Rajakovic on the hot seat? That's the first question. We need to answer it. Now, for 2 years, we've all been talking about the good vibes that the Toronto Raptors have enjoyed, the play style. It's all egalitarian. Guys are developing, young guys, everything. And I think all of that is well and good. It's well and good because that's what the expectations were. You are only judged on your job based on what the expectations are. If I hire someone to paint my house and they mow my lawn, I will likely fire them. And if I hire someone to mow my lawn and they don't mow my lawn, I'll probably fire them. So when Darko Rajakovic took over the job, the mandate was clear. We need to develop Scottie Barnes. We need to develop and change the team culture. We need to develop these young players. And so that's what the expectation has been. And success and failure has been measured on that. Are the young players getting better? Yes. Then Darko is keeping his job. Is Scottie Barnes doing new and imaginative things and trying to take that step towards being an alpha scorer and a number one option? Yes. So things are going well. Things weren't going well for a very long time before Darko came over, and I think we can all agree that he has managed to change the culture. Now, going off of that, what are the expectations now? I think the expectations are to win. I think winning will be pretty much what solves everything at this point. Beyond winning, it is the ascent of the star player. You can lose a lot of games, but if Scottie Barnes can come out and be like a true superstar and everybody just agrees, like on day one, you see him and he puts that midi post package together and he's hitting threes and he's scoring 23, 24 points per game on solid efficiency and everything looks hunky dory and everything looks good. I think all will be forgiven because that's the main thing. That's the main thing because none of this works. If that doesn't work, none of this works. Beyond that, obviously winning, right? Uh, feels good, man. So didn't Darko tell Ingram he wanted to make him an all-star? He didn't quite specify that quote to Darko. I assume Darko agrees with that and probably is aligned with that, but he said they told me. Now, they could be Bobby Webster, they could be Masai Ujiri, or they could be Darko Rajakovic and Jama Malalela. We don't know who said it to him. But yes, that is a goal. But if Ingram has a great season and Scottie looks like a role player, this doesn't work. If Ingram and Scottie miss time and RJ Barrett morphs into a much better player, this doesn't work. So it's got to be both things. Either you're gonna have to develop Scottie. That's the foundational thing. Beyond that, what that next step, whatever that looks like, beyond that, you be judged on winning and losing, which means the timeline for decisions, the timeline for all this stuff. This has moved up considerably since Masai Ujiri has been fired. I'm sure if Masai Ujiri was here, if Larry Tannenbaum was still here, Darko's job was safe for a whole year. Right now, I do not believe that Darko Rajakovic is safe. Actually, if I'm looking around the league at 5 coaches who are on the hot seat, he's one of them right now. Now, how can a person perform so well and so admirably at what they've been asked to do and be on the hot seat? Because the expectations have changed drastically, because the Raptors have been a middling franchise in toiling in obscurity, because there is a recession that is happening right now, because the East is wide open, because there's pressure from higher ups, because Keith Pelly is on crack. I don't know. I don't know what exactly is the combination of things that are moving forward, but every single person I talk to that would be relatively close to the situation says they are aggressively evaluating everybody in charge right now. That's Dan Toltzman, that's Bobby Webster, that's Masai Ujiri, who's obviously gone, and that's obviously Darko Rajakovic. Would it be costly to move off of Darko? No, because he was signed to a 3-year deal with a team option for a 4th deal. They picked up that team option after his first season as a sign of faith to him. But as one of the lowest paid coaches in the NBA, he is not going to be a hard salary to move off of mid-season, obviously. Right now, you're going to see the falling of scapegoats. Now, we don't know what's going to happen with the president's seat. Could be Bobby Webster, could be Dwayne Casey, pray not, but could be Dwayne Casey, could be somebody else. Provided that seat remains empty, it is Bobby's head that's on the platter. Once that seat is full, it is still Bobby's seat. That's that because the new guy who comes in, he may not agree with the previous roster decisions. We've already talked about how Masai Ujiri was this big pusher for Brandon Ingram. He's the one who saw that. Maybe we don't know this. Maybe Masai Ujiri was also the big pusher for Jakob Pertl. Maybe Masai Ujiri was Scottie Barnes' biggest defender. Maybe Bobby Webster loves Scottie Barnes, but maybe he's not completely convinced that he's a guy who's worth shepherding this whole thing around. The most passionate quotes that I've seen towards the media have always been from Masai to Scottie. Maybe Darko Rajakovic was Masai's guy. Again, everyone's saving their own ass here. Bobby Webster is going to feel that pressure from MLSE to win basketball games. And if they feel like Scottie's taking another, flat year and the Raptors are middling and they're not going anywhere with the vision on playoff gate and playoff dollars, the first thing they're going to do is the easiest thing they can do, which is not trade Scottie. It's not to shop, everybody. It's immediately to fire Darko Rajakovic. And I think that it's worth noting that Darko Rajakovic is really betting his entire NBA career on Scottie Barnes actually morphing into the type of player that he thinks he can become. And I don't think that's a stretch to say that at all. Because the reality is you don't get a lot of second chances in the NBA. You just don't, right? Doc Rivers, he made it to the playoffs a bunch of times with Orlando, landed with Boston, won a championship. He's had plenty of second chances. But Doc Rivers was a deeply connected NBA legend with very, very good networks around the NBA. Darko Rajakovic is seen widely as a really great assistant who might be too green to lead a team into a championship. We already know how rare European coaches are. Go around the league, look at the European coaches. There aren't a lot. And Serbian coaches, even rarer than that. So rare that Darko Rajakovic is literally the second Serbian coach in NBA history. And I promise you, Serbia produces a lot of really great coaches. Croatia produces great coaches. Russia has produced a lot of great coaches. There's just this idea that these guys can't coach American basketball, that these guys have rigid, maybe unimplementable, incompatible styles with the NBA. And what Darko is trying to do is wonderful. But the reality is the next president may not think it's so wonderful. Scottie Barnes has flourished in a lot of senses again, under Darko Rakovic. He became a first-time All-Star last year. I think he made a lot of notable progress. I'm going to look at some of that progress. But again, another president might come in and see things very differently. So my estimate right now is that if the Raptors start and they get to like, let's say 40 games and they're like 15-25, you're going to see the first shoe drop right there. 15-25. Start 15-25, and I promise you, the noise is going to get so loud about Darko Rakovic. So right now, if I'm Darko Rakovic, I'm looking at Scottie Barnes saying, "This is my way out. This is my way out." Because if this dude, right, if this dude can take that next step into stardom, superstardom, whatever you want to call it, even if he's not the leading scorer, even if BI is the leading scorer, RJ is the leading scorer, can he become that type of dominant presence on the court to which we can anchor our belief in the future on this guy? It all starts with that guy. Every organization is building around somebody. It may not always be as obvious as Denver. You know, we're building around Jokic. It may not be as obvious as San Antonio. Oh, we're building around Tim Duncan. But even Orlando is building around somebody. Detroit is building around somebody. None of these teams have superstars, but they have a vision for how their player becomes a superstar. Now, as much as the leash has been short for Darko, I think the leash could also be short for Scottie, because now we are heading into year 2. Well, actually, we're heading into year 3 of this is Scottie's team. It started with the first year with, Darko Rakovic. This is Scottie's team. We're turning it all over to him. Fred is gone. We're turning point over to him. Pascal goes stand in the corner. That was year 1 Scottie, really. Year 2 was last year. And one could argue mixed results. Not a lot of winning, but a lot of growth. A lot of growth off the court. A lot of growth as a leader. A lot of growth as a mid-range shooter. But ultimately, not a superstar. Year 5 right now, going into the first year of that max money, this is a make or break season for Scottie Barnes. Now, this doesn't mean, and I'm certainly not saying that, oh, if you don't come out and be a superstar this year, they're going to trade your ass. No. But if you don't come out and be a superstar this year, they will completely remove the franchise tag and stop building around you. And ultimately, either you are going to be traded for someone they can build around, which would be heartbreaking, but reality of the NBA business, or they're going to trade a whole bunch of pieces and a whole bunch of picks to go get somebody that you can build around. And to those people saying, well, then they already do that with Brandon Ingram. No, Brandon Ingram is the salary attached to a lot of picks that is going to be traded for that player. Brandon Ingram is a hell of a basketball player, but Brandon Ingram is about to turn 28 years old. Brandon Ingram is not a player that any general manager in this league is building around today. In fact, so dire were his options last season that I heard that there wasn't a GM in the league that found him to be a reliable or viable second option at a max contract. Teams that were looking to acquire him, like Sacramento, Atlanta, saw him as more of a third piece. So you have 2 players at the top of your pecking order that are both mega talented, both former All-Stars, and Scottie and BI. And the average person around the league has questions and concerns that both of these guys basically are best optimized as third options. BI due to age, injury history, defense, whatever, money. Scottie due to, frankly, offensive generation and a limited shot. That's it. That's where we're at. So if this whole thing with Scottie doesn't work, if Scottie doesn't morph into the type of the shot maker that you that I think he's going to become, then BI becomes the salary, RJ becomes the salary, the picks become dispensable, and then you go out and you try to get that type of player. Now, frankly, players that teams are really building around, like Cade Cunningham and Paolo Banchero and Anthony Edwards, these guys don't become available. Who do you trade for? Anthony Davis ain't moving again, and he's too old. Joel Embiid is about to be medically retired. Do you make a mega offer for Devin Booker? What do you do? There aren't a lot of players that can shepherd a ship like this. Do you get impulsive and try to make a deal for Donovan Mitchell if the Cavs are not looking right? Do you try to make a trade for Jaylen Brown, thinking maybe he's the guy who can do this for you? Even if I would argue that BI and Scottie are better players than Jaylen Brown, maybe they see him as maybe they see him differently than I do. You go out and try to make a trade for Trey Young because he's not happy in Atlanta, and you say, okay, well, maybe we got to go trade for this guy. Trey Young, LaMelo Ball, these are your options. You're not getting Paolo. You're probably not getting Franz. You're not getting LeBron. He's 41 years old. You're not getting Luca. You're not getting Anthony Edwards. You're not getting Cooper Flag. You're not getting Victor Wembanyama. You go and make a trade for John Morant. Andrew saying, how do you feel about trading for Lauri Markkanen? Honestly, man, I actually put Lauri Markkanen in the same boat as Brandon Ingram as a talent. It's very, very similar. Even if I think Lauri's a little bit better, and I think around the same age, it's tomato between those two players. They're seen similarly around the league. I could argue Lauri, because of his shooting and size alone, is viewed as a better option, and also injury. So right now you've got a lot of questions, and ultimately you have two players at the top of your payroll, both of whom a lot of people see as third options. So one of these guys got to morph into a star. Now, if it's Brandon Ingram that comes out and starts putting up 27, 28 points per game, maybe there's a short-term solution here where we just kind of grin and bear it and say, okay, well, I guess Brandon Ingram unlocked in Darko's offense, and Scottie Barnes can become more of that. But I still see like a lot of people on the internet, and I've been having a lot of conversations about Scottie on X/Twitter. So shout outs to you if you follow us, that Scottie needs to just go back to being in the dunker. That Scottie just needs to go back to his rookie season role. I've heard this point repeated and regurgitated 1,000 times. Scottie Barnes needs to do what Scottie Barnes does well, which is roll to the basket, drive the basketball, post the basketball, be a power forward. I'm done with Scottie taking threes. I'm done with Scottie taking middies. Well, I'm going to prove to you for the rest of this episode why that's the stupidest thing you've ever said. If you've said it, wash your mouth. It's dumb. And I'm going to prove to you why Scottie Barnes is actually a little bit closer to a player like Kawhi Leonard than you might realize. So, I mean, look, man, I've been high on Scottie for a while, right? Rookie season, right? All the way through. This was my first mix of Scottie. This is going all the way back. And once in a while, I have to catch myself and say, am I really being objective about this? Am I even capable of being objective about this dude? Is this the type of player that I could even smell the bullshit on? Do I smell my own bullshit at this point? I acknowledge the weaknesses, I acknowledge the holes, but I also acknowledge the strengths. Here's my question. Are y'all acknowledging the strengths? Are y'all seeing the vision of what this is or what this could be? A couple of days ago, I broke it down, right? I'm going to share with you something, okay? And this is just going right back to the 2021 NBA draft. And I think this conversation needs to start here. It needs to start here, and then it can extend to how Scottie is similar to Kawhi and what he needs to do to bridge that massive gap. And trust me, I'm not saying there isn't a gap. I'm not saying, this quote right here, respectfully, Scottie has never been a number one option on a good basketball team in his entire life. That typically doesn't change in the NBA, buddy. Well, I'll give you an example of another player who has never really been, well, fair. Was Pascal Siakam some mega number one option on like some really good team before he got to the NBA? Scottie played a single season at Florida State. Okay. Now I wanna bring you back to some stuff here. So Scottie Barnes was the 5th ranked player in the 2023 draft. Sorry, the 2021 draft in high school. Then he went to Marburg, had a pretty decent season, went to Florida State. That's where this story started. But that draft, that 2021 draft, was viewed as the best draft since 2003. Now, has it become the best draft since 2003? No, I think Wemby clears the entire draft by himself. But nevertheless, in terms of top end talent, which included Scottie Barnes, included Jones Suggs, Jalen Green, Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, this was viewed as the best class since 2003. Among that class, to this point, Scottie is the only player to win Rookie of the Year because there could only be one. He was the first player selected to an All-Star game. He is top 2 in blocks, top 2 in steals, top 3 in points, top 3 in assists, top 3 in value over replacement, top 3 in box plus minus, top 4 in rebounds, top 4 in win shares, despite being 8th in games played. What does that tell you? It tells you he's a pretty good player. That tells me he's a pretty good player. That tells me relative to his peers, he's a really good player. Now, if you want to compare him to, prime Kawhi and prime Kobe, he's not that. He's not that. But in terms of what you've done for 4 years, even if the order of operation and the order in which he's done it has not been, to your point, ideal, I don't think it would be fair to say that Scottie has never been the best player on a good team, because the Knight Riders were a really good team, and Scottie Barnes was the best player on that team by far. He was the number one option. If you want to think Vernon Carey was the number one option, that's your prerogative. But, bro, go watch those games. If you think Vernon was better, that's cool. In high school, having a big man like that, yeah, he's going to get a lot of buckets. But Scottie was by far the best player on that team. Right? I mean, there's plenty. Scottie's a point guard. Even if you want to see him as a power forward or a small forward, Scottie's still a point guard. So making his teammates better, ultimately, that's what it comes down to. Now, I want to evaluate some stuff here, and I want to explain why I think Scottie is actually a lot closer to Kawhi Leonard than you think he is. So I wrote this all out in the description, but I want to read it out here because I think it's not going to make, nothing I'm really saying here is going to make a lot of sense unless we see this. So first, I want to just point out this right here. Okay. Check these stats out. These are 2 players. Okay. Here are 2 players. Here are their per 100 possession stats from the past 2 years. Okay. So pretty healthy sample size. Player B, that's 105 games. Player A is Scottie Barnes. Who's the better player? Okay. Player A is Scottie Barnes. Player B is a mystery superstar. Who is player B? First of all, that's what I want to know. Who is player B? I'm going to show you these stats, make them a little bit bigger. So player A, any guesses? I'm open. So y'all let me know who is player B. Okay. Player A, 28 points, 11.5 rebounds, 8.4 assists, 1.9 steals, 1.4 blocks, 26% usage, 17.1 field goals attempted, 4.9 3-pointers attempted, 4.7 free throws attempted. This is per 100 possessions, so the minutes are irrelevant. We're doing it per possession, right? Player B, 34 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 2.4 steals, 1.1 blocks, 26.9% usage, so 1% more usage, 1 more shot attempt at 18.3, 5.4 3-pointers attempted, and a few less free throws, 4.2. Who is player B? Any guesses? Let them rip. Any guesses at all? I'll let you know in a minute who player B is. What I'm saying is player B is a superstar. Player B is a max player. Player B is unquestionably a top 10 player in the league. Player A is Scottie Barnes. The gap is not huge. PS Square said, Shea? Hell no. Come on, man. Shea? No, Shea is like a 36 or 35, 36 points, 37 points. It's crazy. Terrence Davis said LeBron. Oh, well, no. LeBron averaging a lot more than 5.1 assists per 100 possessions, my friend. The points are around LeBron. I think LeBron's around 34 points per 100 possessions over the last 2 years. That Canadian saying, I want to think Tatum. You would be incorrect. Tatum's stats look a little bit different, but that's the right idea. Tatum is the right idea. I've been saying Kawhi. It sounds like Kawhi. Matt saying Kawhi. You are correct. That is Kawhi Leonard. Matt said Devin Booker. No, sir. You were correct the first time. That is Kawhi Leonard. So evaluate those stats. To all of you PRA merchants, Scottie Barnes' points, rebounds, and assists per 100 possessions are on par with Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi scores a little bit more. Scottie passes a little bit more. Does that mean Scottie's great or Kawhi's washed? I don't know what that means, but what it means to me is I think you need to look at these numbers a little bit more carefully. Okay. Now, I want to show you something else. This is about mid-range efficiency, okay? This is what I call 10 to 14 feet is a superstar zone for me. This is the most dangerous place on the court. It's right around the nail, free throw line extended. This is the place to be. Superstars do their damage 10 to 20 feet, 10 to 14, some of the hardest shots in the NBA. Everyone, it's very hard. It's very hard to get an open shot in that situation. Typically, I'll explain the value of mid-range shots, why I think most people get them wrong. But for now, let's look at the numbers. Scottie Barnes shot 47.9% from 10 to 14 feet in the short mid-range last season on 78 for 163. So 78 makes 163 attempts. I call this shot the true mid-range, and it is the most dominant outlier zone for many superstars, from Jokic to Embiid to Kobe and Jordan. So I want to show you how remarkable this progression from Barnes has been, given how many of these shots were self-generated amidst a slew of non-shooters as teammates, because the hardest shot to get when you don't have spacing is clean turnarounds and mid-range shots. The hardest shot to get when you don't have a lob threat or a stretch big, which Jakob is neither, is this shot. This is a hard shot to get. And this is Scottie's bread and butter last season. This was his dominant shot. Here are some standouts from last season. Jalen Williams, who was, granted, 2.5% more efficient and a little bit more volume. Kevin Durant, who was 3.5 to 4, almost 4% more efficient on, again, about twice the volume, 158 for 305. Cade Cunningham, which is very interesting, who was, again, look at the numbers, man, from 10 to 14 feet. Scottie Barnes, 78 for 163. Cade Cunningham, 78 for 164. Scottie had the same number of makes, one less attempt, was slightly more efficient. Pascal Siakam, slightly more volume, 82 on 180, slightly less efficient. This is a really tough zone to be efficient in. Notable historic players: 06 Kobe, 101, 107 for 238 from this zone. That's 45%. So Kobe was less efficient from this zone. Granted, on higher volume, but not much higher volume, but more volume than Scottie. He was less efficient. Why did I pick 06 instead of 2010? Because in 2010, he had great teammates. In 06, he had really tough, like bad teammates. And these shots are hard when you don't have great teammates. 19 Kawhi, ironic, 83 for 180 at 46.1%. Championship Kawhi, who you see in the title graphic, was less efficient from 10 to 14 feet than Scottie Barnes, with great spacing and great players around him. 98 Jordan. So this data is available from 1997. 98 Jordan shot 189 for 415. He was considered the master of this shot. He was the highest volume mid-range shot taker in the league at the time. He shot 45.5%. 2011 Kevin Durant, 4 years, 3.5, 4 years into his career, shot 80 for 183, 43.7%. This is a hard shot. Kobe, Kawhi, Jordan, and Durant are mid-range masters. When they had better spacing around them and better teammates, they all shot north of 50% comfortably. I believe Scottie Barnes can shoot 52 to 54% from this zone, which is great. I believe that Scottie can generate his own offense from this zone. Critically, though, I think that Brandon Ingram can do even better. I think BI is even better at this shot than Scottie. You have two of these guys now. Now, if they can work off of each other and provide space for each other, that could be a game changer. Now, I want to talk about Scottie versus Kawhi and what the gap is, what the difference is, and how I think Scottie can close that gap. So, let's look at ranges of efficiency around the basket. So, these are like dunks and layups, okay? Between 0 and 3 feet, Barnes lags behind Kawhi's dominant efficiency, but he's not bad, okay? Scottie's not bad around the rim. The 71.1% that he shot over the last 2 seasons is better than most DeRozan seasons throughout his career. So Scottie is better at finishing around the basket than most players, but he's not dominant. He's not Jokic. He's not Anthony Davis. He's not yet. He's not Kawhi Leonard. So 71.1% over the last 2 seasons. Kawhi is at 78.3. So step one, in my opinion, is fixing the finishes. You'll often see when Scottie Barnes is operating closer to the basket that he leaves a lot of things just a little bit short. Now, there were a lot of concerns early on in his career, even at FSU, that is this the type of player that is going to consistently find easy offense, right? Like, is this the type of player that is going to be able to finish around the basket, generate his own shots, do anything but be a hustle big? And I think he has proven so far into his career that yes, he is able to create his own shots, as evidenced by the fact that a lot of his shots are self-generated in the mid-range and around the basket, where sometimes people felt at Florida State that he had questionable touch. I think his touch has been reasonable at the NBA level. It can get better though. Whereas Kawhi will sometimes dip into you, go into your body. Scotty still sort of goes away from your body. He sort of fades. He sort of has this thing where he kind of goes up and away from the contact. Taking contact and going through contact as such a big player is going to make all the difference. Okay. So that would be the first thing. The second thing, mid range and deep shooting efficiency. So Kawhi is the master of zones around the nail, which is exactly the superstar zone I was talking about. 3 to 10 feet, Kawhi shoots 53.9% the last 2 years. Scottie, 42.8. It's not bad. 42.8 is not bad, but it's not good. Okay. Yes, he has better teammates. James Harden, Ivica Zubac. So yeah, like he's got better teammates and he's had better teammates for at least one of those seasons. He had Paul George, still relatively close to his prime. And that's part of the issue, but he's also more patient. He's more refined. He has better counters, more counters. He has a go-to move. He has greater consistency, and his footwork is more defined in that area. And he's generally better at finding angles and space to work with. Do me a favor after this video, and I don't want to play it because I don't want to get a copyright strike, but go watch Kawhi mid-range shots. Just go watch the turnarounds. Go watch him practice those shots. Kawhi is a tactician. He is a surgeon in these zones, right? There's nothing you're going to throw at him that's going to disrupt him from getting to his spot. He gets to his spot efficiently. If you take one side away, he goes the other way. He's never going to leave something short at the ball. He's almost never going to leave shots short at the basket. Scottie dunks more than Kawhi. Scottie leaks out more than Kawhi. Scottie's a good transition player. But in the half court, when you can just dump it down to a guy and say, go create something, Kawhi is much better at that. Now, from 10 to 16 feet, Barnes last season got very close to Kawhi's efficiency. So Kawhi was 49.1%. Scottie was like 47 point, whatever percent that I said earlier, but not quite. This is the only part of Barnes' offensive game that is Kawhi-esque, which is the mid-range stuff, right? He's not Kawhi from three. He's not Kawhi at the basket. He's not Kawhi, in terms of all that impact metric stuff. But he is Kawhi from around 8 to about 18, 20 feet. He does a lot of Kawhi stuff. And that's Kawhi's most dominant zone. So it's an important part. Over the last 2 seasons, Barnes and Leonard have been almost identical from 16 feet out to the three-point line, which is the long mid-range. Now, last year, Scottie was worse from there. The previous year, he was better from there. But nevertheless, Kawhi shoots 40.8% from there, and Barnes is shooting 39.5%. This is a negligible difference. Okay. So it's from three-point range, which is, the consistent harping point or the consistent criticism from people who watch this team consistently. They would be like, well, Scottie can't shoot threes. Scottie can't shoot threes. You're correct. Kawhi shoots 41.4% from three. Scottie shoots 30.7% from three. In terms of playing with another star, which is to say, Kawhi plays with James Harden, so sometimes he has to space the floor for James Harden, space the floor for Ivica Zubac, space the floor for whoever you're playing with, space the floor for Paul George. Scottie is going to have to do something similar for Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Jakob Poeltl, Brandon Ingram, and he's just not as good at that. Last year, the catch and shoot efficiency dipped. Previous year, though, he was great at catch and shoot, but he was terrible at pull-ups. Last year, he was much better at pull-ups, but his catch and shoot efficiency dipped off a cliff. We need a season where he can catch and shoot as well as he did 2 years ago and pull up as consistently and as well as he did last year. If you get that season, that's a 35 to 36% three-point shooter. Easy. If you get that shooter and he gets better at those things, that's a 39% three-point shooter. That's a 38% three-point shooter, especially at his size with his shooting window, shooting pocket. That's a 38% three-point shooter. Will he ever get there as a shooter? I have no idea. But I would bet that he's over 33% next year. Is that good enough to be respected around there? Not really. Is it good enough to force, teams to go under? No. Or sorry, for teams to go over? No. But Scottie is always going to be limited by his inability to punish teams from more than 12, 15 feet. So that doesn't mean he needs to become Draymond Green and Aaron Gordon. No. It just means that his ability to impact the game when he doesn't have the basketball, especially when he's further from the basket, is greatly diminished. His pick and roll efficiency is greatly diminished because teams are able to go under on those screens and thus negate the roller a little bit. His ability as a pull-up shooter coming so far as it did last year, his pull-up frequency, his pull-up efficiency, even if it's not a great shot, and believe me, I'm not arguing that a Scottie pull-up three is a great shot. It's a better shot today than it has ever been before for him. Now, when you shoot 28% on a pull-up three-pointer, analytics nerds will tell you that's a bad shot. I am not an analytics nerd. I am someone who reads the analytics, studies the analytics, but I'm not an analytics only, brain dead basketball nerd. 28%, 27% on pull-up threes is great when your previous high was like 17%. This is the hardest shot, one of the hardest shots in the NBA. If you can get to 30%, you're golden. If you can get to 34, 35%, you're elite. These are hard shots. Making them is tough. It's easier to catch and shoot from the corner than it is to pull up from 26 feet. I know that. Hopefully you know that too. So Scottie working on those shots is going to dip your efficiency. That's perfectly fine. He did it in a contract year for him. That's generous. But if he can settle into more, catch and shoot threes from the corner, and he's good at that shot now that he's playing off of Ingram and he's playing off a guy who can really create buckets for him. And also, he can continue to progress on the pull-up shooting stuff because Lord knows these two are not going to play all their minutes together. Now you have the makings of like a 36 to 38% three-point shooter. And I think that will be the big gap. Now, he's not going to be 41, 42% like Kawhi, because Kawhi is a lethal assassin as a jump shooter, as a pull-up shooter, and a catch-and-shoot shooter. But if he can get even within 5% of Kawhi here, I think his playmaking can make up the difference. So, whereas Barnes became a much more efficient pull-up shooter last season, especially compared to previous seasons, the gap between him and Kawhi as deep shooters is not easy to bridge. So, whereas 83.6% of Scottie's three-pointers over the last 2 years have been assisted, for Kawhi Leonard, that's 66.5%. So not only is Leonard 10, 11% more effective, he's also taking much harder shots at a slightly higher volume. That's the gap. These two as shooters are non-comparable. Not at all. The gap between Scottie Barnes and Kawhi Leonard as three-point shooters is bigger than the gap between Steph Curry and Devin Booker as shooters. It's bigger than that. So their gap from 2 is closer, though, in terms of assisted versus unassisted buckets. We all know that Kawhi is not some, you create the shots for him merchant. He is a self generator from 2. Kawhi Leonard is an ISO player. Kawhi Leonard is a guy who gets his own baskets. So for Kawhi Leonard, the number is 44.4% of his 2-point baskets are assisted. Naturally, that means about 56% of them are not. For Scottie, from 44.4% is 55.7%. This is a meaningless gap. It's a gap of 1%. And honestly, Scottie was, I think, 45.2% last year. So it's all trending in the right direction. So even more so when you factor that last season, Barnes pushed the number to 45.2, and his assisted three-point percentage went from a career best. So again, I've mentioned this point before on a previous slide, but I'll reiterate it here. The year he became an all-star, 91% of his three-pointers were assisted, which is to say only 9% of them were self-generated three-pointers. These are the hard ones. Self-generating a three-pointer is really hard because everybody knows when you catch the basketball, like he's going for that shot, right? So catching it and shooting it off of somebody else creating the shot, like a drive, kick out, let's say Manuel quickly drives into the paint, collapses 2 defenders, kicks it out to Scottie Barnes. Now, if you shoot that before the defense recovers, that's a more open shot than if you catch it, have to navigate, pick up your dribble, turn around and take a 3 or take a step back, or even if you're coming up, in transition and you're pulling up from 3. I will argue all of those shots are easier than a catch and shoot from the corner, which is going to be assisted. So his efficiency on threes was much better the previous year because 91% of his threes were actually assisted 2 years ago. Last year, though, it was a career low in terms of assisted three-pointers. He went from 91% of his three-pointers being assisted to 73.7. So he's creating more offense for himself, for better or worse. Some people say worse. The third point here is that over the past 2 years, Scottie has gotten to the line more frequently than Kawhi, but he gets to the rim less last season with just 21.9% of his attempts coming inside 3 feet. And his career average through 3 years going into last year was a pretty modest 27%. So it's kind of interesting to say that Scottie never got to the basket as often as people felt Scottie should get to the basket. Now, he has a limited handle, and we'll talk about those issues. But if you look at early Kawhi Leonard, I want to show you this. This follows a similar path to Kawhi Leonard in terms of shot diet away from the rim. But granted, Scottie's worse at it. Rookie through 3 years. So 3 years, Kawhi Leonard took 33% of his shots inside 3 feet. But since then, that number has fallen to 18.4% for the rest of his career. So as he became a superstar, he stopped going to the basket as much. Now, that's not entirely true, but I'll make a case for why it is exactly true. You can find a similar thing happening for Kobe Bryant. From 1997 to 2004, Kobe took about 26.1% of his shots inside 0 to 3 feet. That's the same rate as Scottie Barnes, okay? But the number fell to about 19.5% for the rest of his career. Now, as wing stars progress down this path, be it Jordan, Durant, Leonard, the pattern almost always remains intact. Teams take drives away. They load up the paint. Stars move towards the mid-range so they can generate easier looks for teammates, either at the rim or from 3 in the middle of the floor. The most dangerous place, if I'm a defensive coach, what is the most dangerous place that I don't want Jokic to be? At the nail. This is the hardest place. Why do I not want Jokic at the nail? 1, because he can shoot from there. 2, because he can drive from there. 3, because he can play make from there. 4, because he can see the whole court from there. 5, because he has 360 degrees of passing angles from the middle of the paint. I need you to really think about this from a mathematical or physics perspective, and I'll explain why this mid-range zone that Scottie is working in, this place where Darko has him operating out of, is so important. Remind me to, in the comments, to get back to this point. I don't want to lose my train of thought here. Unlike Leonard, Durant, and Kobe, however, there's no threat of tunnel vision or inability to find the right passes. This is not disrespect to Kobe or anybody for saying they're, not great passers. Scottie's a better passer than those three players easily. I don't think Scottie's necessarily a better passer than Tracy McGrady, Grant Hill, Anthony Simons, Magic Johnson, whatever. Those guys are great passers. But Kobe was not a great passer. He was a good passer and sometimes unwilling passer. Durant and Kawhi are kind of like mid to average to sometimes below average passers. Scottie is not a below average passer. He is not an average passer. He is a really good passer. So rather, I might argue that with better teammates, Scottie could probably average 9 to 10 assists in his sleep. He's already able to average 8 assists, 8 rebounds. So what are we talking about? We're talking about a guy who could average 23, 10, and 8. And you're wondering if he's good enough to be a championship number one while he plays great defense? I wonder why you feel that way. I don't think he needs to become a better passer than Leonard. He's already a better passer than Leonard. He was a better passer than Kawhi Leonard 4 years ago. So the issue is pressure and efficiency. And this is one part skill, but also mentality. The fourth point to sum up all of this Barnes versus, Kawhi stuff is that Barnes enjoys a lot of the same advantages that Kawhi has. He has big hands, long arms, broad shoulders. The gap between these two players, honestly, is that his center of gravity is so much higher, and how much shift and bend these two players have is the gap. Leonard plays closer to the floor. If you've watched Kawhi Leonard on a drive, this picture is a great example. He's below Scottie's shoulder. If this drive was Scottie Barnes, he would be higher. He would be shoulder to shoulder with the player. And that's the difference between Kawhi Leonard and at least one of the major differences between Scottie Barnes and Kawhi Leonard as scorers inside the mid range, inside the paint, is that on their drives, it's not necessarily that Scottie has some terrible handle. Kawhi's handle isn't super dynamic. It's not the greatest handle in the world. The gap here is that Kawhi gets into your body. The gap is that Kawhi gets lower than your shoulders. Sometimes you watch a Devin Booker drive. Devin Booker is about 6'5". Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell, who's about 6'1", Anthony Edwards, even Cade Cunningham, who I've been very critical of in the past. Watch these players drive and see where they angle their shoulder relative to the body. Again, the lower you get, the more you can explode, the less predictable you are, the harder you are to guard. Michael Jordan's drives, Kobe Bryant's drive, Tracy McGrady's drives, these drives are all low. You have to kind of see this from the perspective of not analytics or anything. Just look at it from a perspective of basketball. I'm going up against you. If I'm upright, there's like a limit to where I can go with the basketball, right? There's a limit to where I can explode to. There's a limit to, yeah, that's it. It's the heavy dip. So when Kawhi Leonard is driving, he's into your stomach, right? Like his shoulder is hitting your stomach. And then from there, when he turns, it's almost like a spring. And honestly, you need to think about it like a spring. Take a spring like this, right? Compress it to this much. It can only go this far, right? But take this spring and push it like right here. Now, not only does the speed up is greater, but also the trajectory and where that place can go and the unpredictability of it and the difficulty of guarding it, all of this goes away. Scottie Barnes needs more bend. He needs more bend in his game. He needs more flexibility in his game. He needs more skills in his game. He needs more counters in his game. He needs a better shot in his game. The gap is not close between these two players, but it is possible. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's possible. Scottie getting a little bit lower. He's already getting lower and lower every single year on those drives. You see it. And you know what the funny thing is? I've seen him do it. I've seen him do it. Everything you think he can't do, I've seen him do it. Every single thing you think he can't carry you in a fourth quarter, I've seen him do it. You think he can't play in the playoffs, I've seen him do it. You think he can't lead a good team, I've seen him do it. Haven't seen him do it for a whole season. So that'll be the challenge, putting a whole season together. Now I want to talk about why the mid-range shot is the most effective shot in the world and why a superstar at the nail is the championship formula. Think about Dirk Nowitzki. Where did Dirk Nowitzki? Yes, Dirk Nowitzki was a great three-point shooter, but where was Dirk the most dangerous? Look at Kevin Durant. What made Kevin Durant lethal in Golden State? What makes Michael Jordan better than LeBron James? Let's assume that you agree with that statement. What is it that makes Devin Booker superstar? What is it that has people comparing even a guy like Brandon Ingram to Kobe Bryant? What is it that had people comparing Kobe Bryant to Michael Jordan? What is it that makes these players great? It's their ability to dissect you and to punish you from a very vulnerable spot on the court. I believe that there are critical zones throughout the floor. And I wish I had a graphic so I could put this all into a video, but I'll just have to identify that the every single player has a gravitational push, right? Or like a force, right? Shaquille O'Neal underneath the basket, Steph Curry from 28 feet, etc. Right? Now, what's scarier? Shaq 28 feet from the basket or Steph 28 feet from the basket? Obviously, Steph. What's scarier? Steph under the basket or Shaq under the basket? Obviously, Shaq under the basket. However, any NBA player has gravity under the basket. They all do, which means that is a vulnerable place on the court. That under basket, like right 3 feet and in, that is a very vulnerable spot on the court. There's no way that a player gets the ball in that position right there and the defense does not react, right? That shot right there is what everything we do in basketball is meant to generate. Why does Kobe, why does Michael, why does Kevin Durant and Kawhi Leonard, why do these guys take fewer and fewer shots from that area? Because those are the easiest shots in the NBA. Not only, by the way, are they the most efficient shot in the NBA, an open dunk, it is also the easiest shot. An open dunk and an open layup is the easiest shot. So a defense is oriented to stop the offense from getting the easiest shot. Now, the second most vulnerable place on the court, in my opinion, is the nail. Most players at the nail will get guarded. Ben Simmons, 14 feet from the basket, is going to be guarded at least by one player. You're gonna at least put a hand up. You're gonna at least put an arm up. You're gonna at least put some resistance. You're not just gonna back off that. Now, Ben's a good passer. Ben's not a good scorer, and he's not a willing scorer. So at that point, Ben's going to struggle to generate a double team. The reason that Kawhi, Kobe, Michael, etc., are so dangerous is not only can they command attention or gravity at the nail, the reason Jokic and Embiid and Giannis are so powerful, they don't just grab a defender at the nail. They get two defenders at the nail. Now, what happens when you get two defenders at the nail and the player who has the basketball is a good scorer? Well, the threats open up everywhere for passes, right? Passes to the corner are wide open. Passes back above the break are open. Passes under the basket are open. Luka Doncic is a great example, James. What unlocked the Luka and Derek Lively pick and roll was Luka's ability to force the big up to the nail. Because once Luka, just think about a basketball game. Think about this is not complicated. Luka pushes into, let's say Luka's playing the Raptors, right? What happens? Luka catches the ball at 3. He has one defender. He navigates around a pick and roll. The defender goes over, gets lost on the screen. Now Luka is 17 feet from the basket. Luka puts a shoulder into Scottie Barnes, and what happens? He freezes the defense. Jakob Poeltl. Now, when he goes a one shove left. Let's put Scottie out of it because Scottie's a good defender and he usually doesn't. You don't typically get a double team. But let's say it's a weaker defender like an Ochai Agbaji or an RJ Barrett. So you get RJ Barrett as the guy stuck on Luka. He's trying to offer some resistance. He pushes Luka as much as he can, but Luka turns on him, and now Luka's got a shot at about 13 feet. What does the back line or help side defender do? The rim protector here now is moving up to offer a contest because Luka has shed his man in the mid-range. He shed him at the nail. Now, what's going to happen is either He's going to be late, and Luka's going to get an open shot 13 feet from the basket, and he's very good at that. Or he's going to get there, right? He's going to get there, and then the roller is going to cut behind Yak and get an open lob. And Luka is obviously more than capable of hitting that. Or if he goes away from the big, the corner defender is going to sink and try to offer a contest or offer some help. And then he's going to dissect that defender. Or the defense is going to get really crafty and send a defender from the weak side to gang up, at which point Luka is going to skip the pass to the opposite side. The danger of putting a Scottie Barnes at the nail is because he is the most dangerous passer in the middle of the floor. And this is where you want your best players to operate. And this is, by the way, where Scottie is dominant. And this is also where Brandon Ingram is dominant. The only question is, can they be dominant with the other guys sharing the floor? Which is to say, is Brandon Ingram going to become Brandon Ingram was already a really good catch and shoot shooter. So the equation is very obvious. I put Scottie in the middle of the court and I fan out with Brandon Ingram. But you obviously have to give BI some touches here too. So one of these players is obviously going to get a lot of run with the second unit to anchor the second unit. So you'll always, between these two players, you'll always have this 6'9" decent mid-range shooter who can probably score on one defender and will likely require a half double team or, a soft double. And they're both good passers and they're both big playmakers. The most valuable archetype in the NBA beyond the alien that is Victor Wembanyama is the jumbo playmaker. That's what makes Cooper Flagg special, Cade Cunningham special, Anthony Edwards special. Because if you're 6'5" to 6'8", LeBron special, Luka special. If you're 6'5" to 6'8", and you can score on 3 levels and you can pass, you can be a superstar in the NBA. So Scottie Barnes right now does not command a double team in this zone, but he is respected and there is attention. He does not have a big that he can kick out 2 for 3 unless you're counting Sandro Mamukelashvili. He does not have a lob threat big unless you're counting, I don't know, Colin Murray-Boyles, Jonathan Mobo, or maybe Brandon Ingram playing center, small ball center. If you're counting Brandon Ingram's a pretty good cutter. He just doesn't cut. He doesn't cut often enough. Maybe you're counting someone like Ulrich Chomsky, who could be ahead of schedule. I have no idea. Those are the options. He doesn't have the optimal lineup around him. So it'll be interesting to see how they roll into the season and whether or not, they adjust the pieces or shuffle the pieces. That all being said, once Scottie can demand a double team 14 feet from the basket, game over. It's going to be like some shit you've never seen before. Because once this guy can command a double team in that zone, and he is willing to consistently score and score and score until the defense offers the resistance and a second defender, when that second defender comes, he is going to dissect the shit. And this is why comparisons exist to Magic Johnson and Nikola Jokic and Chris Webber. This is why some very intelligent people have compared this dude to those players. This is why Darko Rajakovic, in my opinion, is betting his NBA career on Scottie Barnes. Because the upside of this, you can say whatever you want about the upside of Mobley, the upside of Cade, the upside of Green, the upside of Suggs, whatever. The upside of a player who is 6'8", who can navigate on 3 levels, even if he's not the greatest 3-point shooter. We're thinking DeMar DeRozan, okay? He never shoots. Let's say Scottie is DeMar DeRozan for 3. He never shoots well from 3. I don't think he is, by the way. He's already shown more of a willingness to shoot from 3. He's already shot more threes than DeMar had 5 years into his career, okay? Like, I think Scottie has shot more threes through 4 years than DeMar shot in his first 8 years in Toronto. Scottie has already shown you a willingness to shoot, as evidenced by the fact that his volume on 3-point attempts is relatively close already to Kawhi Leonard, right? So he's shown you that he's willing to bend, he's willing to adapt, he's willing to change, he's willing to listen, right? And once he can successfully command a double team, now you're gonna see 10 assists a game. You're gonna see smart movers. You're already developing much better cutting habits, much better offense around him. There's already the 0.5 basketball, so the potential of secondary playmaking, like the pass that connects the pass. So Scottie makes the pass to the shooter swings it around. the advantage can be generated if Scottie wants it to. The only thing standing in the way of Scottie Barnes at this point is Scottie Barnes. Make sure to like the video, hit subscribe, hit like. It's going to be a hell of a season. Peace, guys.